Hello gents, and welcome back to another Manston-on-Air video, or Manston-on-Air, our media outlet. And I'm here today with the Boeing 747-400 freighter. And we're here today with Golf Mike Sierra Oscar November, Emson, also known for the Joe Sutter livery, and you'll just see just below the flight deck there, the windows there, there's a signature from Joe Sutter himself, the lead designer of the original Boeing 747. And what a majestic aircraft it is! That very iconic hump at the front and 4 General Electric CF6 engines. Well, we'll come back to this very shortly, but I wanted to start off the show with a little bit of a guide on how we go through booking a flight and dispatching it. So in this situation, I have put in the departure ICAO Echo Golf Mike Hotel. By the way, we're on the schedule page here. And the arrival, we're going to Frankfurt, Hahn, Echo Delta Foxtrot Hotel. And you'll be met with the flights available. And in this situation, you've got 3 flights here. It's 3 flights of the same flight number. So it's the 8322, 8322 Alpha, and the 8322 Bravo. Now, when you actually fly these flights, you're just going to fly it as the 8322. You can't actually have more than 4 digits after the call sign. So the only reason we put Alpha and Bravo on there is to actually differentiate it from the original, so that we're not allowed to have duplicates in the list, otherwise the database gets confused. But when you're flying either on Volanta or on VATSIM or whatever, it's the 8322 for those purposes. So what we do is we're taking the 74 Foxtrot today, freighter, Boeing 747. We come up here and you've got lots of useful information here with the destination stands and alternate. And you'd click book flight. And then you'll be met with a message up here. And the message isn't here right now because I've already booked the flight, but it is available on your dashboard page. It says, you have booked flight 8322 Alpha, visit dispatch page for a flight briefing. You have until this time to start the flight before it is reallocated. So what we'll do is we'll click on the dispatch page, and this is what we'd like all our pilots to do. And basically, you're met with this aircraft tracker, first things first. And basically, it's quite easy to fill in, actually. You just fill it in using all these fields here. So we're selecting the aircraft, 747 freighter, so it's a Manston-on-Air flight, not Stratusjet and not Verona. So we're going under Manston-on-Air and we're going for the 747 freighter under cargo. You then come up with this page and it will show you all the aircraft, where they're based, or where they're located right now, who flew them there, and when they flew them there. And this last one is intend to return to base. So if it's out of base, the last pilot who flew it there will intend to return it there. So we give them a few days to return it. After 5 days, other pilots are allowed to return the aircraft. But in general, actually, you know, most guys and most aircraft are left out of base perhaps for 10 days or more. You know, it's not like it's a free-for-all. Eventually someone will fly it back, but if you do leave it there for 5 days, the chances are it will still be there. It's not as if after 5 days it will return to base automatically. And we would like you, if possible, to return the aircraft to base. And obviously for Manston-on-Air, the base is Manston. And so back to what we were talking about, this area here where we're actually filling it in, we've selected the Boeing 74 freighter. The registration is empty because we can choose any registration from this list with the Manston base, and we're going to location Echo Delta Foxtrot Hotel. Well, we're taking Emson, so we're just going to type in Echo Delta Foxtrot Hotel, and we're going to replace this with my pilot number. And today's date, it is probably now the 16th, I want to say. and I do intend to return it to Manston. So there you go, location, there's your pilot number, and there's the date, 16th, so I was right. So once you're done with that, you can then hide or show tracker. So you click that, the tracker goes away. If you need it back, you can click it again, it comes back. Nice and handy. Then you're left with this information. This is also useful information. It's giving you, well, the key pieces of information are how many passengers you're taking, how much cargo or payload you're taking, the route, the suggested route that we're giving you, and these routes are updated monthly to keep in line with the monthly air rack, and again the information regarding stands and preferred alternate. So this is really useful for planning purposes. You know, I use PFPX, for example. I've already generated a flight plan for this flight, and I will show you that very shortly. But basically, I take the figures from here, pump them into PFPX, and then I produce a flight plan. Once I'm done with that, I can close that, and I'll show you the flight plan that I made earlier. Here it is. So we've got Manston to Frankfurt. We've got the MSC 8322, that's 8322, Golf Mike Sierra Oscar November. Cost index 50, that's what we use across the fleets. And basically this is what we've got here. So you can see then that we've taken the 68078, again the same on that page, the 3 passengers, and that gives us a total payload of 68366. For fuel, the minimum we could have released with here, or minimum takeoff rather, was 16.3, let's round it up, plus obviously the taxi fuel. But I'm going to actually tanker on this sector just in case we go back empty. For minimum flight weight purposes on the 747, you want to set off with 25 tons. So I want to arrive with 25 tons. So I've basically calculated this to end up with 25 tons of fuel. So that's about 16.8 tons of fuel extra. It does seem a lot, and you've got to be careful when you're tankering, insofar as you don't want to exceed your maximum landing weight here, 295742 on this particular model, but will be well under that 258691, so that's not an issue today. Other important things to note from here, I mean the initial altitude 330, we can have a look down here where it's leading us up. We're only going to go up to 330, and you can see we already start descending down. So 330 is our cruise altitude, and that is more or less it. This is also taken with real-world weather from Active Sky, and that's giving us the winds, and you can check that those winds are cooked into the flight plan by seeing that the winds are all there. There's some average wind component here. We're expecting an average wind component at 65 knots, which should only give us a 40-minute flight time. It's going to be a pretty quick flight, to be honest. So going back into the actual flight, let's start setting up, shall we? Let's get back to the task in hand. And I'll just jump straight into the flight deck now. Alright guys, welcome back, and we're here in the flight deck of the Boeing 747-400 freighter, and I thought I'd quickly show you that we actually have a checklist available on Discord. It's the 747-400 normal checklist, and I will make it available on the website under other downloads docunet. But it reads a little bit back to front. You have to read right and then left. And today I'm just going to follow the checklist. It's nice and easy, simple enough. We'll get the battery switch on. So the battery switch is up here under a guarded switch. We lift the guard, hit the battery. Then it wants the standby power selector to auto, hydraulic demand pump selectors off. These are these 4 switches here. they remain in the off position. And then to the alternate flap selector, that should be in the off position, that's this one here. Landing gear lever down, the flap position indicator and flap lever, it's in the up position, that's also in the up position, and they agree, electrical power established. So I'll just start the APU now. Usually it'd be quite nice to have a status display here to see how the APU is starting. We could actually move that over to here, but I won't do that just now, just to keep it nice and simple. We'll just wait for it to start up. In the meantime, we can move on slightly. So while we're waiting for the electrical power, we can't actually turn the RS mode selectors on yet. We can check the circuit breakers, Papa 6, these are these ones. You'd make sure they're all in, and the overhead maintenance panels is panel back here. Again, checking all the switches are in as they should be. And the circuit breakers down there is the Papa 7 circuit breaker. It says Papa 6 there. Maybe it's the other way around. Papa 7 is this one then. Yeah. And then, well, either way, you're going to check all the circuit breakers, and then you're going to check the emergency equipment, which is actually stored back over here in this container here. Make sure that things such as the oxygen masks are working and they're correct, and you check that the documents are all there, and the status display, when it comes, we'll have a look at that. APU is now available. We only select Gen 1 on the freighter, and I'll tell you for why in a few minutes. But there is APU Gen 1 selected, and we go back up to where we saw electrical power establish. All the screens should come alive now, they do, and RS mode selectors off the nav, so they can go straight to nav. Go back to where we were up to, which is status display, so we bring up status, stat, over here. We're just making sure there's no messages down here, status messages that could be left over from the last flight, things that might be wrong with the aircraft. And we're also checking that all this hydraulic quantity, the pressure, temperature, APU indicators, and that we have enough crew oxygen. And that's very much it there. And as for the CDU, we check and enter the present position. So go to FMC, it says enter RS position, it's telling us exactly what the checklist wants us to do. So we go to position initialization. You would fill in the airport, I've already actually done it here, and then you bring the best source of information, which in this case is the GPS, down to the scratch pad. Depends company by company which piece of information you use, but 99% of them use the GPS position first, then perhaps the last position, and then if there's no other data available, you'd use the airport or gate position if you have it available. Enter route, and we're just going to fill in initially the initial route page here, Echo Golf Mike Hotel to Echo Delta Foxtrot Hotel. And the flight number Mike Sierra Echo 8322. So initial cockpit preparation checklist complete. We can throw that away. And now I'm going to talk about this APU Gen 1 switch before we do the flows. So the reason why we only select number 1 is because when you select number 2, you actually disconnect power to the main deck ground handling bus. That's used by the load masters and the ground handling personnel, basically to open the side cargo door and the nose cargo door, as well as some of the equipment they have downstairs in the main deck. And if you select APU Gen 2, you won't actually be able to open the nose door or the side cargo door, and I'll prove that to you right now. So if we go to menu, FS Actions, Doors, page 2, and I go ahead and select APU Gen 2, and I try and open the nose door and the side cargo door, nothing happens. As soon as I disconnect APU Gen 2, I try and open those, and they open up, as they should do. And, well, I've explained why, but I have made a short document about it on the forum. It's under the training department. It's called Boeing 747 Freighter Selecting a Power Source for Cargo Handling Operations. And the too long didn't read version of it is, in short, if you want to operate the cargo doors, only select APU 1 or external 1 as a power source and leave APU 2 and or external 2 in the avail position. And follow up by saying, remember to reselect both APU 1 and Gen 2, APU Gen 2 prior to engine start once the doors have closed. Simply because we want to give the best power source available to the fuel pumps for engine start. That is all available to read on the forum, and there are diagrams there to explain how everything works in a bit more detail. I will leave a link in the description below for you to have a read of that if you're interested. But the crux of it is, on the freighters, well, we're on the ground and we're not starting the engines, APU Gen 1 only. It's quite happy on Gen 1. No real difference apart from, you know, when you're starting the engines. Then you really want to. It will actually start with one. The second one there is more for redundancy, but it's just nicer on, you know, it's nice to be nice to the aeroplane to share the load across two generators. So let's start with our flow. So we start, you know, here and we work our way down. I've got this nice torch on my mouse if you hadn't already noticed. Making sure all these are off, we did earlier. Any lights you want on, I've already turned these lights to where I want them. Making sure this emergency light is armed and closed in the arm position. These should all be in, these fire handles. And just start switches. On the Pratt & Whitney engines, which do not have auto start, at this stage you want to select ignition 1 or 2 or ignition alpha or bravo, which is a little switch here, but we're on the General Electric engines, so there's nothing to switch there. And then at the fuel crossfeed we just turn those two on at this stage. Leave all the fuel pumps off. We come down to here, we got automatic anti-icing, which is all nice feature to have. And back up here, with the APU running we can actually turn on pack 1, which gives us some nice air in the flight deck, and we can turn the navigation lights to on. You can see that door's up now, so I'm going to close the doors so we don't forget those later on. Then we come down to the bottom here, we check the oxygen is working. Again, panel lights as you want them. I would set the auto brakes to RTO, I've already done that. Coming down to the centre, having a look down the centre pedestal now. You want to select COM 1, you're going to be talking on COM 1 and listening to COM 2. That's actually the centre, COM 2 is this one. You want to set 1 to 1.5, it's already set there, good. And just checking down here, 2000 if you're not on VATSIM, or if you haven't been assigned a escort code 2000, and the weather radar. So you want it in 5 degrees tilt up, which it pretty much is. Maybe it needs a 1 notch more. I've left the seatbelt sign off. I have actually pre-fueled us to the correct fuel, so I am actually going to turn the seatbelt sign on now. Now that fueling is complete, I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to go across the MCP now. What we want is to switch the flight directors on. I know it's runway 28 in use. It's a bit gusty today. Gusting over 40 knots. So 281 I think is the course for the runway. 5,000 feet for the stop altitude on this departure. You should have toga and the crossbar there. Flight path vector for me, I like flight path vector. I like to have data on, I like to have airport on, I like to have station on, and I like to have traffic But you definitely want traffic on. It will say TCAS off, that's only because you haven't switched TCAS on down here. So with that done, we just make sure the QNH is correct. I think it's 996. I'm just going to double check on Active Sky. 996, and you can see there it's 29 gusting 40 knots at 250 degrees. It's pretty strong wind today. So that's all set. Now we can set up for the ACARS and putting in the flight plan. It's not having the best day today for the ACARS, but we will give it a go. So you put in your departure airfield, origin station, and then your arrival, Echo Delta Foxtrot Hotel. We're going to depart, let's say, at 13:45. We know it's a 40-minute flight. Estimated time en route. We put MA for the IATA airline ID, MSE 8322, and we hit that. Now it's sent, that's going to go up into the cloud and do its thing, so hopefully we can draw down the flight plan into the FMS. So we will wait just a couple of moments for that to propagate. And while it does that, we can just double check. I'll show you how to put the loads in. So FS actions, go to fuel. I will actually top that up just now to 35 tons. Yeah, we were looking before at oh, we don't want PFPX. We wanted this one. We wanted 34.4, so put a little bit extra on there for the purposes of APU burn. Always nice to be a little bit fat on the fuel. That's a nice thing to be. And to be honest with you, you know, a few kilos here or there on a big heavy jet with a maximum takeoff weight of 385.6 tons, 500 kilograms is not the world of difference. It is on something lighter like an Embraer, but on something this size really doesn't make that much difference. So, but it does make a difference to my comfort levels. So that's going on right now, 35 tons while we burn the APU while I'm talking to you. So once that's gone through the ether, hopefully you can click request send, and you should be able to click 747 and then go into routes there, but today it's not playing ball. So the other way you can do this is actually type in the file name that you called your route when you sent it off from PFPX. You know, if you've got it set up correctly, you can simply go Mike Sierra Echo, I called it the 8322 Alpha, and that will actually set up the route, and I can activate that and execute, and I can put back in my 8322 into the flight number. The route is now in there. If I go through to the next page, you can see the route is actually in the box, which is what we want to see. And what I like to do next, after I've put the route in initially, is actually put in the departure arrival. So click that, runway 28, Dover 1 Mike, execute. And then what I like to do is start filling in the VNAV. So put in 330, we're cruising at flight level 330. 2,000 feet step size. In fact, today there's not going to be a step climb at all, so I'm going to put 0 feet. And then after that, now we can load the winds. So we go to legs, route data, send the request for the winds. And again, that will go through the SATCOM, again through the ether, it goes up into the sky and comes back down with some wind data. Should be back very shortly. We can load that up, and we should have then W's to show that the wind data has been populated. You can see there all the different levels of temperatures and winds being populated as they should be. And with the wind data, you also get the descent forecast uplink. So you want to go to VNav, page 3, forecast, load. Again, it will populate this. We can execute all of that. And at this stage, this is when I would do the route copy. So this will copy it to route 2. And the reason why that's useful is in case you make a mistake on route 1, then you can go to route 2. Or, you can also use route 2 if you need to return. You can put in an arrival back there and quickly hit route 2 and then, return back to base. And everything is there ready to go. But I just like to have it there ready, in case I've made a mistake with the route and I need to have a backup of it, so that it's in route 2 and I just hit route 2 and it'll be the same route and everything. With the winds and everything, it should all be there. That's why I like to do that after I've got the departure in and the route in and the winds in. So next thing I'll do is actually go to the fix page and put in the MSA. So the MSA here at Manston is 2300. I already did that actually. So that should show, once we got the VNav data, that will show along here where we actually make 2,300 feet to get above the MSA. It's not really a high MSA today, but high elevation airfields or with terrain around, that's a really useful tool to have. Especially, you can imagine if you've got an engine failure or a fire or something, and you're absolutely maxed out trying to fly the aeroplane, having that data there actually displayed on the nav display is really really useful. So once that's done, you can quickly check through the SID, make sure everything is joined up, and again you could use plan mode and have a quick look through that, go through the steps to make sure everything is correct there. I'm going to go back to map. But then the next step would be to go to initref to start setting up the performance data. So go to performance. One of the nice things about PMDG, you can double click the zero fuel weight, it will propagate and pre-fill that in for you. So it gives you the zero fuel weight plus your fuel, will give you your gross weight. And then you can fill in your cost index, which is 50, all fleets at Manston-on-Air, and the reserves, which on this one, if I remember correctly, was about 7.6. Reserves 7, okay, a little bit more than that, 7.8, 7.9 we'll call it, we'll round it up. $7.9, and then you can start filling in your performance data. Now, I have actually done my own performance calculation because I have my own calculator. You can get your own calculator. Tools like Topa and a couple of others like TopCat will do it, and also PMDG will calculate its own data as well if you have it set up correctly. But I will use my own calculator and I'll fill it in and I'll let you know what I'm filling in. So now that I've calculated the performance data, essentially it is quite windy here today. The QNH has just changed up to 997, so I have set that there. But we're looking at 29 gusting 39 knots, about 30 degrees off the runway. So what we'll do is we'll use a takeoff 2 because we are quite light, but we will not use any selected temperature because it's gusting so much. You're going to want that extra power just to power through any drop off in the gusts. So we're going to use full takeoff 2 power there, and when you select takeoff 2 you also want climb 2. Then I'm going to go to the takeoff page. My calculator's come up with flaps 20, and we'll use 3000 here for the acceleration height at Manston, just to keep the residents happy. 1010 is what my calculator's come up with for the engine out acceleration height. and while I'm here I'll just quickly change the barrow to match that. So it's about 1010 plus 190. Yeah, we're talking about 1200. So this is to give me a visual representation of the engine out acceleration height. And then 1500 remains for the thrust reduction, dry runway, and then for the V1 we'll use 125, rotate 134, V2 149er, and the trim, nice and easy, and just double click that and it'll come up with 5.5 on the trim, which we will set once we get some hydraulic power, but it's nearly there. Once you're done that, you just want to set the V2 speed up here, so 149er, and we have done that, so we can hit VNAV. And if we look very carefully now, we can see 2,300 feet. That's where we're going to get to the MSA according to the VNAV profile. So pilot flying will have the speeds up, and pilot monitoring will have the legs page. We have, in this instance, let's say we've got the departure clearance, we can now hit LNAV to say we've got the departure clearance. And we're now actually in a pretty good position to start to get going. So let's head back to our checklist and let's do the before start checklist. We can just say pins and covers, they are removed. At this stage what I'll actually do is remove the chocks, because I remember putting those in when we first got here. So remove those, and we'll go straight back to the takeoff ref page. Up at doors, they're not installed on this aircraft. Oxygen is set. The flight instruments, we've checked those, they are displaying correctly. The altimeters, we've cross-checked at 1997. We want this in hectopascals, 997 and 997. It's cross-checked. The fuel quantity, we're to bring up the fuel page here. We just make sure it's all nicely balanced. 35 tons total and 8.7 in all the main tanks balanced. Part brake, it is. Always read the telly, don't actually see what you've set. Part brake is not set. Hang on. Why is that not saying part brake set? Let me just cycle that again. Interesting. Alright, we'll leave that there for a minute. It should say part brake set, but it may be because it hasn't got enough hydraulic power to actually set the parking brake at this stage. If you look down here, the hydraulic pressure is very low and it's got brake source here. But we'll just make sure the aircraft isn't rolling forward. It's not good. So we'll come back to that. Fuel control switches. They should all be in cutoff, which they are. The auto brakes RTO. They are in RTO. The passenger signs are on. They are passenger signs on. And the briefing is complete. So then we can do a flow for our start, pre-start flow. And this is where we'll start getting some hydraulic power as well. So now we've been cleared for the start, we can, and all the doors are shut, we can start that second APU generator. We can come down here, we set hydraulic pump number 4 to auxiliary, and 1, 2 and 3 to auto. And with any luck, part brake set as we wanted. And look, here comes the hydraulic brake pressure, as we've now got some hydraulic pressure going to the brakes, which is always handy. So continuing on with the checklist, or with the flow rather, we come down here and we make sure we start putting some fuel pumps on. Now we always turn on these fuel pumps, but I would have the fuel page up, just so if you've got any fuel in the center tank, you'd turn the center tanks on. And in Alpha Alpha Lima, the passenger aircraft, if you've got any fuel in the tail tank, you want to turn those on. Actually, if you've got less than 7.7 tons on in the center tank, you actually leave the center tank off for departure until you get a message to tell you to turn it on. But in this case we've got 0 in, so we leave it off and we just turn on the main tanks, which we have done. We then come across here, make sure that packs 2 and 3 are off. We can turn the beacon on. We're about to start the engines, and we can turn the transponder to transponder. We can also set our trim here, 5.5 units, since we've got hydraulic power. And we can continue through the checklist. So mobile devices off, CDU pre-flight complete and set is basically, as we said before, takeoff ref page complete and set legs page on the right. You would also actually at this stage, sorry to jump across during a checklist, but you're going to go to the engine page and recall, just check any messages here. And you've actually got a fuel tank to engine message here, so you're going to deal with that now. So in this case we'll go back to the fuel page, we check down here, and we're going to turn off. So the fuel tank to engine message is basically telling us the fuel is below, it's around 53 tons it goes to fuel tank to engine at this stage. Rather than cross feeding the fuel across all the tanks, it wants to go each fuel tank to each engine. So what we do is we turn off the override pumps because we don't need to push fuel around the system, and we turn off the cross feeds. And you can see all those pumps have now switched off, and the fuel tank to engine message has disappeared. So now you should just be left with 4 messages: 1, 2, 3, 4 shut down, and TCAS off. So we can actually cancel those messages because we know about those. Go back to the engine page and we're ready for start. So I'm going to go from that checklist again. Mobile devices off, CDU pre-flight complete and set, demand pump 4, it's aux, demand pump 1, 2 and 3 in auto, packs 2 and 3 off, packs 2 and 3 off, and the trim should be 5.5 units, 5.5, 5.5, 0 and 0. For the aileron and rudder trim. Beacon should be on both, and the transponder is on transponder. So we're now cleared for pushback. We can go ahead and start pushing back. I don't have GSX in this parking position, unfortunately, so I'm just going to do the old-fashioned Shift P pushback here. So I'm going to disconnect the parking brake and start pushing back. But we should be moving backwards. We are. Actually, what I'll do is I'll start the A cars. So hang on. Park brake set again. Right, so where were we? We were going to start pushing back. So again, as I say, disconnect the parking brake. Park brake set has gone from the ICAS. And we use the old-fashioned Shift P, and we'll start moving back here. Lovely jubbly. So let's start the engines, because there's 4 of them to start, and it takes a little while. Here we've got auto start. It's always good to remember that before we start starting them. We start engine number 4 and work our way through to 1. So engine 4, pull the start switch, and fuel control switch to run. So we've got N2 rotation, EGT, N1 is beginning to rotate, bit of fuel flow, and then should come the ignition, Oil pressure ever so slightly starting to rise, and the oil temperature is really beginning to rise now. Here comes the ignition. Oh, we're rolling forward again. I've got a little problem with my shift P, I think. Anyway, I'm on the brakes. Just monitor this start. Yeah. Okay, we're going back again now. Very odd. Anyway. Bit of a slow start on this one, I have to say. We're all started now, so we do an after start flow. It begins with turning off the APU, and then we can go and turn the fourth hydraulic pump selector to auto, and then come across here on the Pratt & Whitney. We select the ignition selector back to auto here rather than A or B or 1 or 2, and then I come across again and go aft cargo heat on, turn the packs back on. We can then go ahead, come down here, we can go to the status page, we can recall any messages. TCAS off, we know about that, so we can cancel that one, and we can ensure that the TCAS is in transponder still, which it is. Then do a control check here, so let's do the, just make sure that both these yokes are moving. So forward. Be nice and slow with these controls. It's not like that. Big, heavy control surfaces, and you are actually moving quite a lot of metal when you're doing this. Left, center, right, center, and the rudder pedals, left, center, right, center. Now we can set our flaps, so we're going to have flaps 20, there's flaps 20, and we can actually start commencing taxi now, so we turn our taxi lights and we can release the parking brake and begin taxiing. So a little bit of power today, so we're on the cargo stand here on the right hand side. Not quite that much, I don't think, but that'll do. And once those flaps have rolled to 20, you can actually start doing the before takeoff checklist. Or in fact, we can do the after start checklist. Yeah, APU is off, anti-ice, we've got that in auto, recall checked, we did that, ground equipment was clear, transponder is in transponder. Before takeoff checklist, then the flaps are set to 20. We've got 20. Make sure we're on the centre line here. 20, 20. Flight controls were checked, takeoff briefing reviewed in the cabin. It's a cargo aircraft, it's secure. Once we're cleared for line up and takeoff, we'll make sure the packs are in the correct position for takeoff, which they are. They're in auto, and the transponder will go to TARA. So once again, I'll leave you here until we get lined up for takeoff, as it's quite a long taxi up to the end of runway 28. So just as we get to the end of runway 28 here, now is your final chance just to make sure everything is set correctly, or it's just begun raining. That's going to make our performance a little bit different, but there we go. So we're checking that we've got Toga, we've got LNAV, VNAV, and QNH looks to have changed as well, so let's change that to 908. Open that one. Make sure we've got takeoff 2, no derate, and we'll use flaps 20. Just stop here for a second. Auto brakes RTO, and there's no other messages. We can actually close the status page, recall that again. Now that we're clear to line up, we'll turn the landing lights to on, strobes on, and the transponder TARA. That's the final item on the checklist. The 4-tickle checklist is complete. The next checklist is the article checklist, and that one's a recall by memory checklist. It's landing gear up and off, and the flaps are up. So we can go ahead and line ourselves up. Might just have a quick look here at the performance while I'm lining up, or what a wet runway would look like.
Approaching 28.
So that has changed absolutely nothing actually, so perfect. We'll just leave everything as it is. I thought it would brought the V1 down, but seems that the runway is long enough, given our weight, to use 125 as our V1. Of course, we are checking on the approach, make sure nothing is coming inbound, but we're offline today, so there is nothing coming in. So we line up here. Especially in gusty conditions, it's good to do a bit of a rolling takeoff.
On runway
avoids
2,600 meters remaining.
It avoids any engine surges as the buffeting of the air goes past the engines. So we know that the wind is slightly from the left, so I will use a little bit aileron into wind. There's a little bit left aileron into wind. Not too much that it brings it so much spoilers, because that can affect performance. We'll start the clock here. We'll also start the timer. We'll do the same on the other side. And we'll start beginning to set the thrust. So thrust levers coming up slowly. I'm going to let it get up to about 30 knots. We've got lots of runway today, it's not an issue. And then I'm going to slowly bring them up. And now I'm going to hit Toga.
Caution, short runway, short runway.
Toga's not working, so I'm going to set them manually. That's alright. There's 110 knots, check.
V1.
V1. Rotate. Positive rate, gear up. I believe the auto throttle is now working as it should be. And to free up some of my capacity right now, I'm going to go to left autopilot is in command. And you see there the auto throttle has now brought thrust levers back to climb 2. We can stop the stopwatch. There we go, getting a bit of a buffet now. On our noise abatement procedure, as we turn right towards 310 degrees track. Follow it up with a heading bug. It's now targeting the acceleration speed. I'll let it level off at 5,000 feet despite being offline, just so we can accelerate a little bit. We're above the flaps 10 bug speed, so we can select flaps 10. Once we've selected the first notch of flaps, we can put the gear to off, and we go to the VNAV page on pilot flying side. Then we can go to flaps 5, because we're above the flap 5 bug speed. Flap 1 bug speed, so flaps 1. Happens quite quickly when we're light like this. Now here's an interesting thing. Do you go to flaps up when you are so close to the flaps up bug? Well, I would say if the winds were calm, sure. But right now, today, they're not. So I personally would err on the side caution and probably keep flaps 1 whilst we've got this speed constraint of 230 knots, which we do until we pass point So I will leave you here until and then get back to you. So here we are at we're just passing the corner here, and you can see the speed has now jumped up to 250 knots as per normal. And I'll bring the flaps up to 0. One thing I forgot to mention just before departure, should actually push this weather radar button to bring the weather radar up. Would have been quite useful today with a few bits of rain around, but nothing too bad fortunately. Sometimes it does get forgotten, so if you do forget it and it's raining, it's a good reminder outside to, you see it's raining, to switch it back on. Anyway, flaps are now up. So what we can do is we can switch off the outboard landing lights, the taxi lights. So we leave the inboards on until 10,000 feet. As I'm actually going to start climbing up here to 330. Again, we're offline, so we can actually do that. Hit the button here, cancel the restriction at Dover. She will begin to climb up and away. Follow up with the heading bug. That'll do, something like that. And this is why it's 40 minutes. Look, we've got a 61 knot tailwind at 6,000 feet. It's incredible. So now that we have the flats up and the gear is in the up and off position, there's transition LCU by the way, we hit standard. We can do the after takeoff checklist, which is landing gear up and off. It is, and the flaps are up. After takeoff checklist is complete. We continue our climb up. Now, in the fuel efficiency document, which I put in the forum, again I will put a link in the description below the video. There is actually a section there about climb speed and max rate of climb speed, which is the most efficient climb speed is max rate, because you want to get up to that cruise level as quickly as possible, especially when you've got a tailwind like this behind you, and it's only going to get stronger as you go up. So the max rate of climb speed in the 747 is the max angle speed plus 40 knots, so it's 287 knots. So I will just set that in a minute, just as we're going through 10,000 here. What I'm going to do is turn off the lights. That's all correct, and we will just turn off put these to auto. Flash signs off. So 287 and decimal 82 on conversion would usually be the best rate of climb. However, decimal 809 today, because our cruise speed is decimal 809, so we'll maintain that one. And now we're doing the best rate of climb speed, which is great. What I'll do now very quickly is actually put those minimums back to 0 because we no longer need those until we come in for landing. And that, guys, is pretty much it for the climb. We'll leave it as it is. We'll get to climb, top climb, and then I'll get back to you when start planning for the descent and landing. So we just got to the top of climb here, and something I forgot to mention is during the climb just after 10,000 feet, it is worth very quickly checking your ECS page. Make sure that your cabin altitude is climbing appropriately, that the aircraft is pressurising. Anyway, on to more pressing matters. We're getting to our top of descent here very quickly, so it's worth putting the arrival in. We go to departure arrival index, because that was for Manston, and we're going to go to arrival. We're doing the ILS runway 21. It's 21 in use there. We're going to use the... I'm going to actually put in that Foxtrot Hotel 506, and I'm also going to select the Ropov 3 Alpha arrival. We're just going to link it all up in the box very quickly. Things are happening very quickly here. There is the 506. I'm going to put that on top of that one. Execute that. Just having a little think about its life. And I'm going to start setting the MCP down. Let's put it initially to 60. Okay, it's actually given us a little bit more time, which is good. 60 is the initial stop, so I'll put 60 in there initially. I am just going to rattle through this very quickly because things will be happening very quickly because it's such a short flight with 130 knot tailwind and 601 knots ground speed. It is the ILS runway 21. You can bring up your own chart. I've just got it in front of me right now. The minima for a Category D aircraft is going to be 1,800 feet on the Barrow. I have to say, guys, it's very windy there. It's gusting about 40 odd knots. I have done the calculations for landing. Because it's so windy and because we're light, it's definitely, for me, going to be a flaps 25 day. Our landing weight is going to be approximately 259, let's say 0.4 tons here. We'll use the flaps 25 speed. And with the gust, I mean, I quickly calculated it. I would bring up Active Sky here. We're looking at 240 at 26, gusting 42. So in normal times, you'd take half the headwind plus the full gust for your VREF additive. So that would be, the headwind in this case is 240 at 26. 240 at 26. The headwind would be 23 knots, so half of that is 12 on the larger side, and then the full gust. So the gust is 240 at 42. That's a 36 knots. So 23. So sorry. 36 minus 23 is 13. So in total, it's 25 knots. But the maximum we can add is 20 knots. So because the gust is so large, we can't actually add 25 knots. We're adding 20. So our actual V approach speed will be 172 knots. It sounds a lot. It is a lot. Ground speed will be significantly lower because of the wind. But that's just how it is. Because it's so windy, I am going to use auto brakes for this approach. And so we've got the barrow set, we've got the speed set, we've got the auto brake set. It is possibly worth also setting the QNH down there. It's 998. So just go ahead and set that 998. And we'll just do the before this, what's it called? The before descent approach checklist. That's the one. recall, so we check that very quickly. We have a look at the recall. Recall, there's nothing here, it's checked. Auto brakes for landing data, VREF is going to be 152 and the minimum is 1800. Set. Altimeters preset 998. I'll just put this one on 998. Oh, yeah. In the real aircraft didn't do that, I can assure you, but so we'll go back to that one and we'll preset 998 there, 998 there, preset and cross-checked, and the approach briefing, well, that is completed. So descent approach check is complete. The next one will be the landing checklist. Cabin secure, it will already be secure because it's a cargo aircraft. Speed brake will be armed, the landing gear will be down, the flaps will be 30. So that's the checklist. And what else is worth talking about? Well, the thrust levers are coming back and we're now going to VNAV path. It's capturing its path. For the descent profile, it's selected 250 knots. That's yes, I do remember what I was going to say now. So what you want to do is go to your NavRab page and double check that the ILS frequency and inbound course in there is ready to go and correct. It should automatically tune, but it's worth checking every time. So the ILS from the plate is 111.3 and 211 inbound course, which is all correct. It's good. It is also very quickly worth checking the arrival here. I'll go to plan, make sure we've got something sensible. That is what we want to see. And the missed approach should be what is published. So it's climb on course 212. There's your 212 course from the NDB to 10 miles off the Foxtrot Hotel, then turn right, heading 032. There's 032 there. To insert 099 inbound to the NDB, climbing to actually 5,000 feet. 099, there's the NDB, 5,000 feet. So 5,000 for the mist. And one thing that is worth mentioning, actually, this is a bit of an odd one at Frankfurt Hahn. It's a bit of a gotcha. There is no DME off the ILS itself. So if you want a DME, which really you do, you're going to have to take it off the VOR there. So we're going to have to actually tune the VOR. The Foxtrot Hotel, which is 117.35. I'll put it on both sides. And on top of that, I mean the missed approach is based off the NDB, so strictly speaking, we should tune the NDB as well. So that's 376, both sides as well. So I'm going to go back to map here, and I'm going to select VOR left, which should give me the DME when we get a bit closer in, and I'm going to select ADF right, so that I have something pointing to the NDB for the missed approach. And that's where I'll leave it, folks, until we get a bit closer in and we start configuring, or we get below 10,000 feet. Still 123 knots, look, it's incredible. Okay, so we are just about coming into the terminal area now. And we're going to need some drag, because otherwise we're going to go zooming past here. Look, we're still doing 436 knots, so I'm going to get the speed brake out. Bring it to the flight detent there. And I'm also going to use flight level change at this stage. I do find that flight level change, as you can see, it commands a little bit more aggressively than keeping it in VNAV. Just to nail that speed really more than anything. And then I'll go back into VNAV and I'll go into speed intervene, which is similar to flight level change, except it gives you some altitude constraints for safety purposes. Look at it, it's cutting the corner here to try and keep up with the wind. I think the wind has literally just caught it out massively. Now, one of the things that Hahn, I happen to know, is they want you to roll to the end of the runway to turn around. So I won't actually use auto brakes 4, I'll use auto brakes 3. And we'll actually not even need that, but I'll knock it out or knock it down once we're on the runway. Get down to 240 here. And then, as I said, VNAV. Open the speed window again. Oh, look. It's got a speed constraint, it seems. It wants us to be 220 knots. I think that's part of the star. Just double check the published chart here. Yep, 220 knots we should be at this stage. So I'm going to use flat 1. And what you just heard was the ding. So the seatbelt signs actually kind of automatically come on with the selection of flaps when they're in auto. But we will actually turn them on manually once we approach 10,000 feet. It's bringing the heading bug around to match. The frames are beginning to take a hit here, but that's expected. It's a bit heavy scenery, to be honest with you. There's 220 knots as we wanted, and we turn all the lights on apart from the outboards until we're clear to land. We're through 10,000 feet now, and I'm going to turn the seatbelt signs on. Another ding. And still, that wind is still incredible, right? What is the transition level here? Actually, it's worth checking. Transition level by ETC. The transition actually is 5,000, so we'll use that. We'll just go to VNAV, forecast, 5,000 here. We're actually now below the profile, but I will bring the speed back a little bit further for this base to final turn. Maybe bring another stage of flaps out, otherwise it's going to overshoot slightly, I think, with that tailwind pushing us through the final approach course. Bring it back to 190. Yeah, the frames are really beginning to take a hit with this scenery and the weather and everything. And as we approach the final approach, what I'll do, oh, there we go, there's the thrust coming back up, speed brake lever stowed, localizer is armed, (5,000 feet), or flight level 50, depending on which way you look at it. Localizer captured. This is actually 5,000 feet. This is transition level. And I'm going to arm the approach. Now, as you can see, there is absolutely no DME information here. So we hadn't set the DME off the actual VOR, we'd be stuffed. And another thing to note is the VOR is actually a little bit further away than the airfield itself. So it's worth noting that you are actually closer than you think you are. So at touchdown, you're approximately 1.1 mile from the beacon. So basically, you're 1.1 mile closer than you think you are. It's 5,000 for the mist. We've got 5,000 set there, and because it's transition altitude, it is actually at flight level, so flight level 50. So that's a bit of a threat, if you like. On the missed approach, we're going to have to hit standard if we have a missed approach, which could happen. It's a very windy day. I mean, look at this wind correction here. It's a good 10 degrees. And we've still got 52 knots at 5,000 feet, so we're at flight level 50. So we just got a little bit of a level segment here, which is okay, to be honest. Doesn't worry me too much. At this point, I just have a final check of our final approach speed. That is correct. And then on the pilot flying side, I will go to progress page 2, which will give our headwind component and our crosswind component. Intercepting the glide slope now. I'm going to select flaps 10 as we go down and set the speed. We set what we say for the approach is 152 plus 20 is 172. Holy smokes. Okay, and 5,000 set for the mist, and we're going to set the EGMH. So we're 8 miles out. I mean, look at that, the runway's off to the side there. Certainly got my work cut out for me again today. It was a bit like the Embraer video, except I've actually got an ILS this time, which is kind of helpful. Look at that. Bit bumpy, innit? Might actually help to get a bit more flap out with the speed, low speed tape coming up like that.
Radio altimeter.
Check. So we're 6.5 miles out. I'm putting the gear down. Flaps 20. No more speed to move, because this is going to be our final approach speed. I mean, if you actually look at our ground speed, it's 145 knots, so we're not actually as fast as it looks. Gear down, flaps to 20. We're now at 5.4 miles. The other thing about Hahn is this undulating terrain here, which can catch you out as well. Because it can come up and bring the radalt lower, and if you're not stable by 1,000 feet, then it's potentially a missed approach situation. So flaps 25, I'm going to arm the speed brake now. Speed brake's armed. So remember the landing check is speed brake armed, gear is down, flaps 25, landing check's complete. Well, I'm glad it's a sim. Oh dear, oh dear. Well, never a dull day at the office, eh? I'll keep the automatics in for now. It's actually doing quite a good job, all things considered. Yeah, there's a bit of...
2,700
Don't sink.
meters available.
Don't sink. Don't sink.
I don't know why I'm getting don't sink warning. Maybe it's just going below the glide there. It's doing well, all things considered, let's be fair. Okay, now I'm going to take the automatics out. So 2 clicks on the autopilot
Don't sink.
and
Short
manual
runway,
thrust.
Don't
short
sink.
runway.
Don't sink. Don't sink.
Approaching
Don't sink.
minimums.
Don't sink.
Minimums. $50, $30, $20, $10.
Bit of a bounce. Just let it come
Long
down again.
landing, long landing.
It's not that long, it's in the touchdown zone, love. Now again, I've got aileron into wind.
1,000
Looking at that ground speed.
meters remaining.
Okay, going to knock it down to auto brakes 1 now. We have reverse engaged still.
900 meters remaining.
Reverse actually remains engaged until we get down to a taxi speed. That's not an issue at all.
600 meters remaining.
Okay, now I'll bring the reverse out and disconnect the auto brakes. Now it's just a case of taxiing to the end of the runway. I've brought the speed brakes out and welcome to Hahn. I mean, wasn't the cleanest of landings. I wouldn't have liked the bounce really, ideally, but sometimes it happens. So, what I'll do is I'll turn around the aircraft, get it taxiing back up the runway, and I'll get back to you then. So we're taxiing back up the runway now, and I'll just bring the flaps up.
On runway 033.
Purposely left them down just to put them up for you, and we'll just begin to, set up the aircraft for after landing, which is turning the weather radar off. We don't need that anymore. I've already turned these flight directors off. There's the follow me, racing around, doesn't know which way it's going. Hang on a minute, where are you going? I'm going to stop the aircraft here. If he's crashed into me, it's his fault. There he goes. If he goes right here, I'm not following up there. No, sorry, I'm not following you. I'm going up this way, thank you. I just happen to know that that's not the right way to go. We can turn this to transponder. I know we're still on the runway, but there's no traffic here. And the auto brakes can go to off, and the aft cargo heat can go off. And we can put the APU to on, which actually opens the opens the valves, the vent, so to speak, ready to. There you go. You can see it opening just at the rear there. The door to take some air in to start the APU, so that when we do actually want it, it's going to be a little bit quicker to start up. So just to recap on that landing again, I mean, as I say, it was rather windy, gusting 42 knots. It is quite a dynamic environment. On these big heavy jets, the best thing you can do is not sort of overreact, especially when you're getting quite close to the runway. And certainly on the 747 in particular, what you really don't want to do is, like you might on other aircraft, get a wing down. As you get the wing down too far, more than 6 degrees of bank, and you're going to have a pod strike, and that really is, not good news. So the idea is, keep. What I like to do is keep the crab in, until you're basically in the flare, and you can begin to decrab and use that rudder around 20 feet. Because as soon as you use that rudder, your aircraft's going to start drifting to one side of the runway, to the way the wind is blowing you. And on other aircraft, you would counteract that with aileron. but you simply can't do that to the same extent on the 747 because you just haven't got the engine pod clearance to do that. So you've got a finite amount of time whilst you've got the rudder in to get the aircraft on the ground in a crosswind, which is why the rudder comes in very late. And in addition, the aircraft is actually designed to land in a crab, in somewhat of a crab, let's say. The landing gear does actually rotate. The main gear is rotating to align with the runway by a certain amount of degrees. So you're not putting huge amounts of stress on it, and even then it is designed to cope with, unlike some other aircraft, it's designed to cope with some of that torsion effect when just concentrate on this turn here, with some of that torsion effect when you touch down with the aircraft crabbed. So it's not the end of the world if you do touch down in a crab. The only issue is that then you've got to control the aircraft once it's on the ground. So if you can decrab it, when you're just above the runway, that's great. But just be very, very cautious with the aileron until you're actually on the ground. Then you can get a little bit of aileron into wind. I'm not saying no aileron into wind, but just watch your bank angle. That's really, really careful with the bank angle. It really doesn't take much to have a pod strike. So that's what I'd say about crosswind landings. Again, ideally you wouldn't have a bounce like that. I think, what caused it potentially was just carrying a bit of excess speed. And just sometimes it just does happen. It wasn't a big bounce. I knew it was going to sit down again. So you just keep flying the airplane. Whatever you do, don't stop flying the airplane, because what you don't want is the airplane to start flying you, and then you're in a sorry situation. Right, we're off the runway now. So we never did actually turn those lights on. I was too concentrated on the bloody landing. So those are now off, and the strobe come off, and we can start the APU. Awesome. We can actually monitor the APU starting today. There it goes. Well, I don't know, the follow me was a little bit of a failure. We're heading to Gulf 4 for parking, and we'll see what that's like when we get there. APU starting up. Very nice. Could taxi a little bit faster, I suppose. It's certainly cold out there. Let's get on the taxiway, shall we? Which one of these is it? It's the next one. So we can turn the taxi lights off so as not to blind the marshaller. Marshaller. There we go. Turning on to stand now. A lot of aeroplane behind you, so just keep that in mind when you turn on to stand. APU is running now. I bet it's going to say I got a... Oh! A little bit too far. Oh well, that'll do. Probably had worse parking. Parking brake set. We'll set the engine page so we can see what we're doing here. And for the shutdown, we have started the APU. We select APU Gen 1. That's associated. The gens are off, because the APU Gen has got it. Pump 4 to aux, 1, 2 and 3 off. And now we can shut down with the fuel control switches to off. Make sure those are idle. This can go to standby, fuel pumps can go off. Pack 2 and 3 off. And when, and only when, the engines have fully shut down, then we can turn the beacon off. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is it. We'll just hook up some stairs. Oh, I was somewhere in the vicinity of the stop line there, look. And, you know, just in case you were interested, my landing rate was 240 feet per minute on the first touchdown. The second touchdown was about 180. It shall accept given 42 knots, you know. It's not horrendous. Main thing is, you know, we're down safely. You can see there the rudder is just hard over now with the wind pushing it. It's quite normal with the hydraulics being switched off. Okay, so now that the engines have basically completely shut down, we can turn the beacon off and we can open that door and we'll get the chocks in. And at this point we can release the parking brake, ensure that we're not rolling, and turn the pump number 4 to off. And that's it. We're pretty much shut down. We can do a... as part of the final thing, you can actually turn off the IRSs. Once all the data has been sent, we can do a quick checklist. So shutdown checklist, hydraulic panel is set, fuel pumps are off, flaps are up, the parking brake, we have released it, fuel control switches cut off, weather radar, yeah, it's test, doesn't really work in the sim, transponder standby, mobile devices on, summary landing data, we've sent it, you know, we would have sent it there, send, and the RSs are off. So that's shutdown checklist complete, and that's how we do it. I mean, you can actually switch it all off, that is possible. Essentially all I've got to do that is I'll turn the nav lights off so it's not draining any power, we'll turn the pack off, we can disconnect the APU gen, we're now on battery power, turn the APU off, that will shut down the APU, and then what we can do is before we shut off the battery, I'll just switch the emergency lights to off, standby power off and the battery to off, and we can just double check we've done everything again with the checklist. Secure, emergency lights off, packs off, APU, external power off, standby power off, battery off, upper deck doors as installed, which they're not manual. Secure checklist complete. And there you go, there you have it, 747, done and dusted. See you later guys for another installment of Manston-on-Air. I hope you did appreciate this video. I know they do get quite long despite the flights being very short, but I do like to try and get into some of the detail. And as I say, 3 things that we'll do. One is I'll link the post about the 747 freighter APU ground handling bus forum post in the description of this video, and I'll also link the Boeing fuel practices also another forum post in the description of this video, and I'll put that checklist on the other downloads of the website, so you can download that from the website. And that's more or less it, guys. I think that's all I've got to. That's all she wrote. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Cheers. Bye bye.